And welcome back to another edition of the On the Board Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Thomas, aka Shawnee on the mic. Happy Friday to all. As always, joined by my wonderful co-host William Chirucci, aka Will C, quarantined in Long Island, New York. Will, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Can't complain. We're here right now trying to make the best of a bad situation. It's a beautiful day out here in New York right now. Very hot, humid, but, like I said, trying to make the best of a bad situation right now.
Exactly. Well, me and you are an honor to be joined by a great guest from ESPN and the SEC Network. Me and Will are joined by the one and only Cole Cubelic. Cole, thank you for making some time. How are you doing, pal?
I'm doing well. A little bit sleep deprived. We've got a 3-week-old at the house right now to go along with the 2-year-old and the 5-year-old. So it has been a little bit hectic, but this quarantine's actually been pretty cool for the family. It's a rough time for a lot of people. Not to diminish how serious this has been for so many, but I was supposed to be on the road with the XFL until about really I would have had a doubleheader our last week, and then I would have gotten home on Monday, and then 1 week later we would have gone into the hospital. So instead I had 5 weeks with a family of 4 to be able to hang out, spend time together, do things together, and then obviously welcome another baby boy into the world. So it has been it's been actually really nice to be able to be around them, spend time around them, see my daughter and my oldest son grow close together. They're like little best friends now running around. It's been pretty cool. So we've taken a real negative and been able to find a way to turn it into a positive.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, Cole.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Pal.
Cole, how did your love for football start up for you at a young age?
Oh, I don't know if I had much of a choice. My dad's family is from Pittsburgh, and we were watching Steelers games from when I can remember. And everyone in his family, his sister played basketball at Clemson. He and his brother went to South Carolina, so they were college football fans as well. But we've been watching – I can't remember. My parents were divorced, and I shouldn't admit this, but I guess statute of limitations is gone now, so it doesn't matter. My dad lived about an hour and a half away, and when he would take me home on weekends that I would spend with him, he had this television that was about as big as a shoebox as far as like the circumference all the way around, and then it was about that long. And he would balance it in between the driver's seat and the passenger seat in the floor of the console. And we would watch NFL games on Sundays when he would drive me back to Birmingham. He was just a big football fan. And my grandfather on his side, my uncles, my aunt on his side were all big football fans. And that's Thanksgiving. I spent every Thanksgiving and Christmas in Columbia, South Carolina, until the first one that I didn't was a high school playoff game when we played the Friday night after Thanksgiving. That was my junior year. And then the next one was Christmas Day of my senior year of college. We were playing in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, and Tuberville gave us the option. He said, we can practice 2 weeks here and go down the day after Christmas, or we can be 2 weeks in Orlando, but we're going to have to practice on Christmas Day, or we're going to have to be there on Christmas Day. We didn't practice. He actually let us go to Disney that day. And so we all chose that. And so I was actually in Orlando for Christmas that day. So every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, especially with that side of the family, my mom's side, they were from Wisconsin. So they're actually Packers fans, but they were into football also. It was always football was on TV. We were talking about it. And then growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, it was a part of life. I wasn't an Auburn or an Alabama fan growing up, but that was just a part of who you were. And it was the topic of conversation for the majority of the year. And then I think, coming up from a divorced family, it was something that I just turned my attention to. It was something I could keep up with, something I could be passionate about. I think video games had a lot to do with it. I played a lot of Tecmo Bowl. I played a lot of RBI baseball. I played a lot of NBA Jam. And that sort of just lured me into sports a little bit more. And sports was my outlet. I probably loved baseball more than football growing up because I loved playing it more. They didn't have Little League football where I grew up when I was growing up here. So it was it was kind of my everything, really. It was my escape. It was my passion. I was good at it, so I think that helped a little bit. It was fun, and so I think it was probably a culmination of a lot of things. But it started with my family and just football when the family was together being a big part of our lives.
That's amazing, Cole. That's amazing, Cole. So I know you played center for in Auburn. Can you just tell us about your playing days and how fun it was being a college an athlete?
I tell people all the time when we talk about these kids that are leaving to go pro, and it may be a little bit different now just with the amount of money and social media, but I was never a big time NFL star or anything like that. So maybe for guys that go on and have a Phillip Rivers or Peyton Manning or Deshaun Watson type career, it's a little bit different, but I don't think it's ever any better than it is in college. When I talked about like Manziel deciding to leave early or Cam Newton deciding to leave early, like I don't think it's ever any better than it is, because the level of responsibility, the level of pressure is not going to be the same as what it's going to be in the NFL. And you're never going to be more individually beloved in one place than you are wherever you played college football. And it's just and especially back when, I played 20 years ago, but I can remember RVs being parked on campus on Tuesday and Wednesdays of game weeks, big game weeks, LSU, Georgia, Alabama. And this is back when they could actually park them on the grass where we would go to class. So we would walk past them. They'd be sitting outside their RVs on like Thursday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon. It was crazy. The stadiums that I was able to play in, not just Jordan Hare playing at home, but playing at Tiger Stadium, playing at the Swamp in Gainesville, playing at Bryant-Denny, playing at Legion Field in Birmingham, where I grew up going to big games. And Legion Field, when I was growing up, the upper deck said football capital of the South. And that's what I viewed that as, because that's where the SEC championship game started. That's where high school state championship games were played. That's where bowl games were played. That was where Alabama played Tennessee there. The Iron Bowl was played there. That's where big games were played. So to be able to play in the venues that I played at a school that has passionate fans like Auburn does, man, there's nothing like it. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, and some of it wasn't fun, but most of it was incredible. I wouldn't change any of it.
That's awesome right there, Cole. Absolutely awesome. Cole, talk to us about what you're doing right now, or were doing at that point in time with the XFL.
Was doing sideline for the XFL, which was amazing. So different, so unique, and I hated to see it go away because I thought it was working. I thought it did work. You see PJ sign a deal with the Carolina Panthers. You see Te'amu sign a deal with the Chiefs. I think the Steelers are bringing in like 6 guys to their mini camp this fall that played in the XFL. So it was working. And to be on the sideline doing it gave you such a different perspective. I could literally walk up to one of you guys as you came off the field and do an interview. I could ask you why you fumbled a ball. I could ask you why you gave up a sack, what led to an interception. I could get that raw emotion, be it good or bad. And it was so unique, so different. I don't know if we'll ever experience anything else like it. I think there's some real positives from a broadcast perspective that we can take away from it that will be utilized to a certain extent. But I don't think any doors are ever going to be as open as they were for that league. They encouraged it. The league wanted it. They liked it. They enjoyed it, even though some of it included a lot of drama. We had the New York team. We had the Guardians the week after Matt McGloin lost his mind with Diana Rossini and Tom Luganville. So you can imagine what those meetings were like before that game the next week. They were uncomfortable, to say the least. But he was a good sport about it. And he came in there and sat with us, and he was on the sideline, and he said, you know what? Like, he threw a pick early, and he's like, I'll come talk to you. Like, let's do it. He learned his lesson, I think, to an extent. But I don't know if we'll ever have that kind of access again. And to be on the front end of that, to be a part of that was really cool. To be able to talk to coaches, to hear what the play calls were going to be, to hear the offensive coordinator talking into the helmet of the quarterback or the defensive coordinator talking into the helmet of a linebacker as they're getting ready for the ball to be snapped. It was truly remarkable. And I think when you're looking at, between 1.5 million, 2 million viewers a week, around 20,000 people per game in the stands, it was working. And I think the access, I think some of the rule changes, if they were to add a couple of big names, I think the XFL had a chance to really be successful long-term, if not for this pandemic.
Okay, very interesting.
That's interesting to hear, Cole. Interesting. Cole, I know you mentioned the Gainesville and the Swamp. I'm a Florida fan, so I'm watching the Florida and Auburn game, and of course I'm happy as hell Florida won. But I'm there watching the game like this Bo Nix kid he's gonna be pretty good. And then I know that his dad played quarterback as well. Cole, in your mind, how good or how great can Bo Nix be coming into his sophomore year?
I think he has a chance to be really good. And you brought up an interesting point because you think about, and I said this with Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter last night. He asked me, without spring ball, what is this going to look like? What's most important? And I think the physicality or lack thereof is probably the most important for multiple reasons. Are guys going to be ready for a season once it gets here? Number one. Number two, once they're allowed to begin preparing for the season, what are they going to be capable of actually doing? Are they going to be able to go hit 4 and 5 times a week? Are they going to be full pads 3-4 times a week? I think most coaches are probably going to even be scared to attempt that with their guys that many times a week. So I think we're probably embarking on the least physical college football season we've ever seen. And that's not going to be anybody's fault. It's just sort of happenstance as to what these guys have been going through to prepare. And I think that's the biggest task that coaches and especially strength coaches are going to have, maybe even athletic trainers, when these kids come back is, where are we? You're going to have to set a baseline of where we are, where we thought we were going to be, where our goals were that we wanted to be, where we were last year, where we are in the middle of that, and then what's the lowest place we can be before we start. We got to find a way to get there in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever they have. It's interesting with Bo Nix because you look at some of these kids and I don't know who they're throwing with. I don't know who they're working out with. Some of them have a quarterback coach. Some of them have a personal trainer. That's cool. Bo Nix has a guy that played the same position at the same school and wore the same number living in his house with him.
Right.
Every day, every single day, who's been an offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, who's been an offensive coordinator at Miami, who coached him in high school, so they can go grind on film. They can go work on his technique and his fundamentals. He's got a guy he can go throw with. His dad's a high school coach here outside of Birmingham. They got footballs. They got a field. They got a weight room. So I think when you compare it – now, I'm not saying this makes the biggest difference just as far as him being a quarterback, but comparatively to most of these other quarterbacks, Bo Nix may be in a position to make a bigger jump because of everything he's had at his disposal during this pandemic and during this quarantine. And I think Chad Morris can help him. He's got good mobility, underrated mobility. I think he's got good durability. He's put together pretty well. If he can find a way to learn more trust and more patience, he could have a big season. He's got a go-to receiver in Seth Williams. They're going to have a good running game. Tank Williams is coming in at tailback. I think can help him. But he got to a point late last year where it was first progression not there, I'm out. And he would either tuck the ball and try to run, or he would scramble, or he'd throw it away. And he's got to learn to be a little more patient and have a little bit more trust for his O-line and for the scheme and for his reads. And if he does that, he's got a chance to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC.
Very interesting. Hey, speaking of college sports and the NFL draft, it passed and it was really the only thing to watch, Cole. What has been your takeaway on the 2020 NFL draft? Who do you see being like a sleeper coming out of the whole draft in your opinion?
I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have huge value. Last pick in the first round of Kansas City. Kansas City, I think, had the 4th most RPO plays of any team in the NFL last year. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a running back play over 300 snaps last year. So you think about if you're going to be RPO heavy, what's the first thing you have to have? What are you reading? You're reading the linebacker whether or not you're going to hand it off. You got to have a dude to hand it off to. He's great in the screen game. He's great in protection. He catches the ball well. and he's durable enough to be able to handle the load between the tackles. And I'm not saying that I think Kansas City's turning into a 40, 45 carry a game running back type team, but he can offload a little bit of the run game that we saw Patrick Mahomes have success with in that playoff run. He's going to be great helping in protection to help protect that asset as well. Can catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. He doesn't have to come off the field. He's a great fit for that system and for what they do. And you really have to sort of pick your poison with that offense. So you're going to try to keep your safeties deep and Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, not let them get over the top. You're going to play Travis Kelce underneath. There should be a lot of space for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a guy who can create his own space to be able to get the ball in his hands and help generate positive yards next year. I think he has a bigger season than people project. I love the Raiders draft. People wondered, like, why Ruggs number one? Why'd he be the first receiver off the board? My thought process on that is, if you're going to do what the Raiders did, is if you're going to take a couple flyers later, you go get the guy who's different. And Ruggs is different. He runs different than any of the other guys in the draft. Like Jerry Jeudy, probably the best all-around receiver in the draft. If you're talking about running routes, hands, catch radius, how shifty he is in the open field, but none of them run like Ruggs does. So get a guy who can change the way defenses have to play you. Get a guy who can turn quick, easy passes into explosive plays. High percentage passes can be explosive plays. And then later, you go get a guy in Bryan Edwards out of South Carolina who, if it wasn't for a few injuries, would probably be at the top of the first or bottom of the first or top of the second round anyway. A big physical receiver that played like his hair was on fire first half of last year. He's going to catch a lot of balls for the Raiders. And then you get the ultimate Swiss Army knife in Lynn Bowden, one of my favorite players coming out in this draft. He's a guy who I think can be your short yardage quarterback, your red zone quarterback. He can line up at tailback and carry the ball some. He can play slot receiver. He can hurt you down the field, and he can be a kick returner. So now you got a guy that takes up 4 or 5 roster spots and that can help your team in a lot of different ways. So I think the Raiders became much more difficult to defend with what they did in this draft. I like what Miami did after Tua. And I'm not saying I dislike Tua, but you go draft an offensive lineman in Robert Hunt out of ULL who can play, who I think can be a starting guard. You go get Solomon Kindley out of Georgia, who has been a really good starter for them for a few. There were multiple games where he was the best offensive lineman on the field for Georgia the last 2 years. And they had 2 guys taken in the first round.
Right.
He had an ankle injury, got a little bit out of shape late last year, wasn't the same guy. He gets his conditioning in order. Solomon Kindley will be a longtime starter in the NFL. So you got Chandler Cox there at H-back, who's going to help be a bonus big and help protect. You draft probably 3 starting offensive linemen because you took tackle out of USC in the first round. So now not only do you get Tua, but you potentially get 3 starting offensive linemen and a DB in Noah Igbenogany that can play 2 or 3 different positions for your secondary as well. So I like what the Dolphins did, and that's rare because I haven't liked what the Dolphins have done in the draft for the last few years.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Cole, and being a Florida fan, you are 100% right. I saw Solomon take the will of some of the Florida defensive front guys the past 2 3 seasons, Cole. But, Cole, I've always wanted to ask this question because when it comes to some of the best rivalries in all the sports, obviously you have the Yankees, the Red Sox. In terms of the college game, Florida State, Notre Dame, USC. How can you just tell me, how much of a big game and a big deal is Auburn, Alabama? You've played in the game, you've watched the game. Can you just tell us, being from the East, how big of a game is that game every year?
It is the game. And, I mean, just go back and look at how many SEC West championships, SEC championship game appearances, and national championships have been on the line since 2008. It was almost annually for about 5 or 7 years there.
Right.
And the big separator is this, and I tell people that are not from the Southeast a lot of times that ask me this. This kind of goes for the entire SEC, but I really do believe that Auburn and Alabama encompass it more than anybody else. We love to hate more than we love to love. And most Auburn fans love to hate Bama more than they love to love Auburn. Most Alabama fans love to hate Auburn more than they love to love Alabama. That can get venomous at times, because when that is your primary source of joy, is seeing other people fail and seeing other people not have success, you in turn become a bad person, because you're wishing ill will on people to make yourself happy. But there's a lot of people like that in the southeastern portion of the United States as it pertains to college football. So Georgia fans are like that with Auburn and with Florida and with Georgia Tech. LSU and Florida kind of have that going back and forth. Florida State have it. Auburn, Alabama have it. Alabama, Tennessee have it. Auburn, Georgia has it. LSU's got it with like everybody. LSU, Bama, LSU, Auburn, LSU, Florida, LSU, A&M. Like every game's a damn rivalry game now for LSU. So, Kentucky, Louisville is big. Kentucky, Tennessee is big. Vandy, Tennessee is big. South Carolina, Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia are both big games. So it's not just the mega rivalries that are in the last game of the regular season. You get them throughout the course of the year. And every time one of those games is more competitive, it only ups the ante that much more as to the amount of hatred and the amount of love and the amount of bitterness and the amount of agony and the amount of joy that those fans receive. And a perfect example. So I'm going to the grocery store last week, and I think it's probably about a week ago today. And I had a mask on and I had a hat on. I had a Detroit Tigers hat on. I'm not a Tigers fan. I think it's a clean, cool hat. So I have a Detroit Tigers fitted cap, and I had an Auburn shirt on. It's just a workout shirt. So I had a hat and a mask. You can't recognize me. Now, without a hat and a mask, I'm a bald guy walking around. It's fairly recognizable. I get it. And I'm walking down, and this guy who's stocking groceries in the grocery store, he turns to me and he goes, "Yeah, roll Tide, buddy." And I was just kind of like, "Is this dude serious right now?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "We beat that ass last year, though, didn't we?" And he didn't have anything to say. It was over right then. It's done. Conversation's over.
Right.
It's just, but that hatred, that venom, he could not keep it inside. Right. And he should have known better, because you just lost to him.
Because you just lost to him, right? and not only did they lose, they lost to a freshman. Bo Nix was a freshman. And
fair.
They lost that game.
But they'll tell you that Tua was hurt, and they'll tell you all these other. And Dylan Moses was hurt, and the injuries they had. That's right. Trust me, I've heard it all.
Right.
Okay, Cole. So I know we're running limited on time right now, but this is a two-part question. Number one, Trevor Lawrence, does he go number one overall in the draft next year? And number two, with the SEC being the best conference in all of college sports for football anyway, where do the other conferences rank behind, and what should they do in order to try and be better in that instance?
I think the only thing you can do to be better is find ways to put more resources into it. And that's one thing that the SEC has mastered through donations, through TV contracts, through finding different ways to generate revenue, licensing agreements. And then they put that revenue right back into their facilities, into their stadiums, and into things on campus. They're not stockpiling a bunch of cash. It all goes right back into what they do every day. And as far as Trevor is concerned, I don't see many ways. There are not many instances that I can look and see where he won't be the number one overall pick right now. I don't see it not happening.
Awesome, Cole. Cole, before we let you go, how do the people follow you on social media about you?
At Cole Cubelic, ColeCubelic. That's pretty much all of them. Twitter, Instagram, everything. So that's the easiest way to do it.
Awesome.
Cole, before we go, I'm a diehard Jet fan, and you talking about the Dolphins having a great draft, it just makes me.
Hey, I love Mekhi Becton though. I think Mekhi Becton's going to be a stud. So I think you got a winner there. So you're in good shape.
I hope so. The Jets need some positivity. Last time they made it to the playoffs was 10 years ago. So you know how it goes.
Cole, man, thank you so much. Thank you for taking some time, and best of luck with everything, and stay safe, man. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're always welcome back on, Cole, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
I
the
just
one
don't-
and only Code Cubelic from ESPN and the SEC Network. Will, Cole, great guy. I mean, Will, God bless them, man. He said he has a 3-week-old, a 2-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Oh my God.
That's a lot of energy being used trying to chase around young kids. I can tell you that. That's for sure. I don't have kids. I don't have children at all, but
Likewise.
I can only imagine what he's going through right now.
Yeah, bro.
You know?
Yeah, bro.
God bless him, though. God bless him. God bless everybody else. That's for sure.
Definitely is. Will, any final thoughts for this episode, pal?
No, Cole Cubelic's one of the more great guys that we've had on. Somebody that actually comes from the South and he's living it, he's talking it, he's doing it. And not only that, but to get some sort of different perspective, because our previous guest, Eamon McNamee, right, comes on and he went to Notre Dame, and we asked him the question, will pro sports, will college sports be the talk of the town one day?
Right.
And we got the answer that it's a pro town, it'll always be a pro town. Well, we kind of got the answers from Cole as to why the Southern towns always gravitate to their respective colleges. So that right there alone says a lot. And as far as Cole goes, Cole is just an absolutely great person.
Yeah, man. Cole was great. Well, and I'm always in awe because I'm a huge Florida football fan, and Florida obviously being in an SEC. Florida beat in Auburn, so I had to make sure I slid that part
You
in
did.
there.
You did.
But I watch the SEC network and I see Cole, so it always leaves me in awe of guys that we watch on TV. We get the chance to speak to him, and the final thing that I'm gonna say as my final point is, he brings up a very good point. That Alabama and Auburn, if there's a rivalry in sports more bitter than Yankees, the Red Sox, that is it. But it doesn't get as much publicity because it's college.
Right.
But I'll give you a quick 30-second story to end the show.
Yeah.
Well, this rivalry is so crazy. And Auburn beat Alabama to, like Cole said, go to the SEC championship game. Auburn went to the national championship game that year when they lost to Jameis and Florida State.
Right.
An Alabama fan could not contain his anger for losing to an Auburn. In Auburn, Alabama, they have these trees that grow. And I forgot the name of the tree. Well, he drove from Tuscaloosa, Alabama to Auburn, and he poisoned the tree. And he called into an Alabama radio station and said he poisoned the tree. Well,
Wow.
he was arrested and went to jail for poisoning a tree. So when Cole says the fan bases like to hate the opposite fan base instead of loving their own fan base, that's a clear example. So shout out to Cole, Will, and shout out to you, man.
Absolutely. Shout out to you too, man. You've been making this all happen. So
trying, baby.
It comes naturally for you, man. Definitely comes naturally for you.
My
On that note, really, I have no final thoughts, but just want to give a shout out to all the essential workers out there. Again, cops, firemen, doctors, EMT workers, nurses, construction workers, obviously, and grocery store workers, and even the postal worker. God bless you guys for making America, keeping America still going strong. And one day we'll get out of this. So just want to say thank you for that. And for everybody here at another thing, shout out to Gotham Podcast Studios too. We miss you guys over there. Yes, on that note, for everybody here, shout out to Cole Cubelic. Thank you for coming on and sacrificing some time. Again, you're a busy man. We get that. We understand that. And we thank you for the time with us. And for my wonderful co-host, Sean Thomas, a.k.a. Shawnee on the mic, I am your host, Will Trucci, a.k.a. We'll See, logging out. We will talk to you guys soon. Peace out, and God bless you guys.